Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is 8:25 p.m. Let's do the roll call. Cindy Parham. Here. Mark McDermott.
Here. Peter
Tallman.
Here.
Michael Hurley.
Here.
And Jill Vergara. Okay, let's rise to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the reason why we're calling this special meeting is to address the concerns that Bob Mayer had after we submitted our report. It was unfortunate that this new information came after we did all of our work, but we have to deal with it now, and I think that we should talk about the solutions so that we can work quickly and get this back to LNA, have them have a special meeting so that it can get to the full body and have a vote by January so that the first selectman can do his budget in January. Michael?
Michael Hurley, RTM District 10. As a member of the Senior and Disabled Tax Relief Committee, I am disappointed that Bob Mayer is not here tonight to discuss his concerns with the potential financial impact to the changes we are proposing. Thank you.
Shall we discuss the concerns? So we're all aware of his emails to the committee and that he specifically has an issue with removing the QTAV and replacing it with an assessment limit. Do you want me to summarize his issues? Yes. Okay. So I think that he's extrapolated from the data set that Ross used for our projections that there are about 2,800 total participants and possible participants. And in his view, nearly all of those participants will join the program if we remove the QTAV and replace it with such a high assessment limit. I think that he's unsure how this change will affect the participation rate. So our numbers were driven down a little bit for our charts because of using a participation rate of 50%, which was actually conservative since on average the participation rate in our programs is 47%. So that's how I read his issues. I understand where he's coming from because the other information that he provided was that setting the assessment limit at 880,000 basically opens up the program to 94% of the town, that 94% of the homes in town would qualify. This also doesn't take into account that income is also a limitation, and it's hard to figure out how income balances out or is a restriction for the program, how it will relate to the assessment limit. So do we have any other comments about Bob's concerns? No discussion?
Hi, Peter Tallman, District 8. I don't know, and unfortunately he's not here, and I did what Michael said. The fact that he's not here is not good, since he's the one that raised all these questions, and now he's not here to discuss them with us, so I don't know. I want to know why he thinks everyone that qualifies would go in the program when we have a running record of only 47% of those houses going into the program. So he just doubles it, or he figures everyone will be in it, and I don't know where he's getting those numbers from, that's all. But we're kind of grasping at straws here when he can't even defend or at least explain some of the things he's come up with and some of the questions he's asked.
Cindy Parham, District 2. We had talked about how there were only, I believe, 6 people currently that would not qualify because their property values were over the 880 assessed value. So it does seem a little bit out of line that we would project that many more participants in the program. As a committee and all the work over the last 4 years, really 3 or 4 years, I think that our numbers are, we're not going to find the perfect solution, but the numbers, I think we justified them really well. And the small additions to each of the income caps and adding the income cap and this assessed value of 880, we all were in agreement, and we all felt really strongly about it and had the support of our assessor, Ross Murray. So I just would still like to keep things the way they are, but I know we have other things to discuss to make some changes so we can compromise.
I do want to heed Bob Mayer's advice. I mean, he is our CFO, and I regret that he was voicing his concerns so late in the process, but at the same time, I don't think that we can dismiss what he's saying. And I do think that we need to make some corrections to our proposal to try to keep it, to try to mitigate some of the revenue loss that we could experience with these programs by changing it this way. Mark.
Mark McDermott, District 7. This is the 3rd year I've been on this committee, and unfortunately, the first 2 years we had made no changes at all. So I'm excited at how we worked in a bipartisan way to get to where we are today. I do believe that when we got, we're going to continually get more and new information on a consistent basis here. But yes, Bob's not here. He seemed to arrive late to our game, unfortunately. But there are some concerns, and there'll be some concerns of how we pay for all of this. And if we increase it too much in this first year with these changes, first of all, we may not get it even through the RTM. So maybe we need to take a step back, look at what he's recommended here, and make some changes that'll still be acceptable to, I believe, the seniors in town. Hopefully it will increase participation a bit, because our numbers are all based on, really on who's in the program today. We don't really know who's going to be in the program next year. So it could be 50 more people, it could be 50 less people, we don't know. So I think we take a look at some of these recommendations and maybe make some changes onto what we've already decided upon. Thank you.
I'd like to make a first proposal for changing our assessment limit. I'd like to propose to change it down from 880,000 to 750,000. The 880 correlated to approximately a $1.2 million home. The 750 would correlate to approximately 1.1 million, or 1,085,000 home. I think that that's bring it down a little bit and can help with some of Bob's concerns. It's a little bit of a midpoint between the Greenwich formula, which is 150% of the assessed value, and the Newtown formula, which is 200% of the assessed value. So it's a nice kind of midpoint between those formulas that those two towns chose, which I think is interesting, since I don't think that we're either a Greenwich or a Newtown. We are somewhat in between those two towns. So it makes sense to me to have a moderate formula in between those two. 750 would also mean that rather than having 94.1% of the homes in qualifying under the assessment limit, it would bring it down to 90% of the homes. And 17 people would be grandfathered in. I'd like to make a motion to change it to that new assessment limit. Is there any public comment on? Oh, sure.
Michael Hurley, just a few questions. Just remind me, Jill, the 880, I think it's a number you proposed. Where did that number come from?
We used the Newtown formula, which is 200% of the assessed value. I think that it came out to be 876, and we rounded up.
Okay. And in thinking about reducing the 880 to 750, it sounded as if you were going to make a series of edits or amendments to the ordinance. I think it would be helpful, if that is the case, for you to lay out what all those amendments will be, because if we're going to vote on 750 and we think that, is a good idea, or maybe we don't, and then you make 2, 3, or 4 other, amendments to the program, that could affect how we think about the 750. So I'm asking if you could just lay out what all of your amendments would be.
Okay, sure. So it was a combination of revisions. I thought that we should lower the QTAV, lower the assessment limit to 750 from 880. I also think that we should think about lowering the income limit from 100,000 to 90,000 with a cap of 1,200 rather than 1,400. That would change the total projection from 772,445 to 564,610. And I also think that we should put a cap on the total expenditure for the town on the programs, equivalent to around 4.2 million. It would be 1.6%.
So just so I'm clear, the cap as it now stands allocates up to $7.9 million in senior tax relief, and you're proposing reducing potential savings to seniors if they were maxed out in the program from 7.9 million to 4.2 million? Is that clear?
The 7.9 million is not a number that we've ever reached in the history of the programs. And this is a way that we can make these changes and ensure that our town doesn't take a big loss on these changes. And we can change it incrementally. If we see that the program works and that we're getting more participants and that we need to allocate a higher percentage, we can increase that in future years.
What did you say, you wanted to cap down to 7.9 to 4 point?
It would be changing the cap from 2.5% to 1.6%.
No, I meant the town's cap, the town payout.
Oh,
Oh, it's already been given out.
1,200, just for that income group.
You can't see who's,
It would just be, it would be lowering the cap from the new income group that we're creating, that would be 75,000 to whatever, to 90 or 100,000. That would be capped, the relief would be capped at 1,200 rather than 1,400. No, I'd like to stay with that motion for the assessment limit, changing it from 880,000 to 750,000. Are there any other comments about that? Would the public like to make any comments? Bill? Oh, this is,
Just your name and address again, if you don't mind your name and address.
and that goes 4%. Oh, that's 2.5% of the total real property, down to.
Check 1, 2.
There you go. All right. It's a red button.
I think it's 8. Is it this?
Hello, my name is Bill Lenahan from 42 Alma Drive, and I have a couple of comments. I certainly applaud the committee here and some of the members that are not here tonight for the arduous work that you've done and direction you're heading. My concern from the assessed value is that the QTAV definitely has to go. As I had mentioned previously to you, I think it's archaic, I think it's discriminatory, and it also invites tax fraud. I think people would look at this and just say, yeah, I'm going to sign that statement and I have more than $650,000. Or they're going to look and have their kids put up a trust fund and avoid it that way. We know the tax assessor feels that it needs to go also because he doesn't have the staff nor the ability to police it. And if you want to look at some statistics, per Kiplinger's, what I find being discriminatory is that people used to have a defined pension plan. Many don't have it anymore. Per Kiplinger's, 91% of workers in their 50s do not have a pension. Per Towers Watson, which is a big benefit consulting company, the percentage of Fortune 500 companies providing a traditional defined pension fell from 50% to 5% from 1998 to 2015. So there's a lot of people in town that have saved all their lives knowing they didn't have a defined pension plan to count on, and they have more than $650,000. But maybe they have $750,000 or $1 million. But that is anxiety to them because they're in their 60s or early 70s. They don't know whether that's going to last. It seems like a lot of money to a lot of people now, but come when they're in their 80s or 90s, they don't know if it's going to last. And so, you know, from that perspective, I really feel that the QTAV has to be supplanted. I think you're doing the right thing, and I don't even know whether it needs to be a guideline at all. I mean, there was some discussion about that in previous meetings, whether you even keep it. So, you know, from that perspective, I really think that you're in the right direction. I just hope that the RTM and the LNA does not look at your assessed value, that even though you're ratcheting it down, that they don't look to squash it completely because you know, because it's a $800,000 house. You know, maybe look at 125% of the assessed value year one, and then maybe phase in year two at 150, and year three at maybe 175, something along those lines, just to make sure that all your hard work doesn't become empty because somebody's got some resistance to that figure. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Does this work better? Okay. Herb Lime Cooler, Fairfield Senior Advocates. Bill and I are both members of Fairfield Senior Advocates. I'd just like to speak to a little bit more than this immediate motion in terms of putting everything in context. I'd given the committee some information earlier today, and based on some studies that I've done, admittedly making some assumptions about Fairfield income distribution versus income distribution and wealth distribution nationally, I think that what's happening right now in the current program is that while the income cap is fairly close to the Fairfield median income, the QTAV number of $650,000 is actually a higher percentile of net worth, excluding home equity. And as a result of this, there aren't too many situations in which the QTVA is coming into play as seniors apply for the program. There will be more instances of seniors. There will be more instances of this program coming into play, as the CFO suggested, if the income were increased to $100,000, because I think that would wind up being a higher percentage of the overall median. We know it would be a higher percentage of the overall median, maybe even as much as 150% of the median. So I think that going to the $90,000 number would be safer in terms of avoiding the problem of the QTAV coming into play. So I think the combination of the lower assessment limit and the $90,000 income cap, as well as other measures that you've suggested, would probably serve to reduce the instances of this of the concern expressed by the CFO.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Should we vote on that motion? Just the 750?
I think first you come back and see if there's any.
Okay. Any additional comment from the committee?
Could you just repeat your motion, please?
I'm moving to change the $880,000 figure for the assessment limit to $750,000.
Mark McDermott, District 7. Jill, that percentage, we use the Newtown 200% of the average assessed value of Fairfield from 438 to get to our 880. The 750 is what, around 175%? Is that?
I estimated 170%.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay, so it's unanimous. Okay. So let's move to proposed income limit change. I'd like to, for the credit program, I'd like to change the income limit down. Oh, actually, I'd like to share with the committee Ross Murray's information. That's the changes to the income level as they stand for the current program. We wrote our report using the numbers from last year, which was $73,600 as the limit. Because of the annual inflation with the Social Security, it's going to be going up to $75,300. So I would like to propose to change the $100,000 income limit to $90,000.
So that new bracket would be 70.
Second the motion, Cindy Parham.
Discussion?
Mark?
Thank you. So the new bracket would be 75.3 to 90,000.
Yes.
Okay. Do we want to discuss that not only are we adding a new bracket, we have increased the limits in each category of all those brackets by approximately 10%?
Do you mean the percent credit?
Yes,
or,
the percent
okay.
credit.
Yes, I would like to maintain that increase to all of the brackets at 10%
Yes.
increments.
So that increase stays the same. We're just moving now from 100,000, which we had approved prior to this meeting, to 90,000.
Yes.
Okay.
Michael?
Michael Hurley, RTM District 10. Jill, can you just help me understand? We worked very hard, to come up with these income categories. You've talked you and Mark quite a bit tonight about the bipartisan work that we did, and I think we really did come up with a bipartisan ordinance. There was, at times some friction in the committee, which I think was actually quite healthy, and as to why I think it's such a strong ordinance. But can you just explain a little bit more your thinking now, from moving from 100 down to 90,000, please?
Sure. I think that Mr. Mayor's new information in that he's not sure that these projections are that firm, and he's concerned that the lack of a QTAV and changing it to an assessment limit will bring in many more participants than we projected in our charts, meaning that this will cause way more revenue loss than we had anticipated. I would like to take a conservative approach and make sure that we don't have the town get hit by too much revenue loss in one town, in one year. And I chose this number, the 90,000, because it goes along with a lot of the information we provided in our report. I honestly don't think that the 100,000 to 90,000 makes an enormous difference. The cap also will help, but the combination of those two elements brings down our projection by over $200,000, and I think that that's helpful for bringing this to the full body. And the other thing is, since an organization that represents the seniors in town had initially suggested that we set it at $90,000, I think it makes sense to do $90,000 in this situation, especially when we're being questioned with our projections.
But in all due respect, again, Mr. Mayor is not here to walk us through his thinking, his concerns, and to take questions from this committee. And in terms of what's good government and what's not, it is not good government to not have the chief fiscal officer here to provide more background, more summary, answer questions. We have Fair TV here, and I think the public deserves it. And I just don't think it's good government, and I'm very disappointed.
If you would like, we could patch in Ross Murray, who has provided me his cell number, if you have specific questions for him.
He supported us, so I don't think it's necessary. Ross supported our committee, so I don't think it's necessary for him to call and confirm that. I don't think we should call him. But if we want to call him, Mike, it's fine.
Hi, Peter Tallman. If we stayed with QTAV, I'm trying to think of how many more people this would add by going to the assessment. Because I'm still trying to figure out Bob Mayer's rationale that, well, if everyone signed up for it, it would cost, and we're still saying only 47% are. So does it matter if it's the QTAV or the assessed value?
Are you saying that you don't want to change? You don't
No,
want
I'm not. I do want
Oh.
to change it, but he's saying if we change it, it's going to increase the number, which,
He's saying there's an
unfortunately, he's not here, so we can't ask, like Michael
It's-
said, but.
it's an uncertainty, and for setting the budget, that means that the first selectman will have to put the highest possible projected amount into his budget, which is, he would have to account for, $1.5 million. I don't know if the town can do that. Where does that money come from? And do we want to support a tax increase commensurate to that?
Well, if we kept the QTAV and everybody signed up for it that's eligible for it there, would that add $1.5 million as well?
That would be a completely different situation. If we didn't change the QTAV at all,
Right.
we would be able to use these projections because they're built off of our past experience, which would be applicable because we're not really, it would just be tweaking the income limit, and that's it. It's easier to make that estimate, but changing this to an assessment limit is a good change, but it's complicated because we don't know exactly, we've never done it before, and we don't know how many people it will bring in.
Mark McDermott, District 7. I mean, I think there are a lot of moving parts to this, so every time we touch one thing, we're going to affect something else. So we need to look at it probably more conservatively than we had with this information that Bob has supplied to us, and Ross. And it's unfortunate that they couldn't be here, but you know, we can't be like a snake and swallow its food whole. We probably need to eat it in pieces. And you know, there'll be another opportunity to go after this next year, after we see if any of these changes actually increase the participation in this program. We don't know. We've been on a downslide for the past 3 years on this program. We're losing seniors somehow. Obviously, some are passing away, some are moving out of town because they can't afford their home anymore, or maybe they want to be in a warmer climate. But for those, the ones that want to stay here, we want to keep them here to the best of our ability. And I think some of the changes we've already suggested will help actually those most in need, that need most of the help. So the $90,000 income limit I could support.
Michael?
I think at the end of the day, if Chairman Vergara is going to reduce the cap so the maximum amount allocated to senior tax relief would be $4.2 million, that would be an increase over the current fiscal year of only, well, over fiscal year 2018 of about $150,000. And I thought we were all committed to
That is incorrect.
Okay, so the number here, fiscal year, on your memo?
This cap only applies to our local town relief. It has nothing to do with our state relief that we cover for the state, which they have not been funding for 2 years. So we allocated $3.6 million in the budget last year.
Okay, fair point.
Would anyone like to make a public comment? Okay, back to the committee. Any further comment?
Could I just ask for just like 2 minutes? I just want to reread a section in your memo.
Sure.
Thanks.
No.
Thanks, I'm ready.
Okay. All in favor of the motion to change the $100,000 income limit to $90,000 with a $1,200 cap? Did I include that in the original? Okay, not the cap, just the income limit to $90,000. Aye. Okay, so it's unanimous. Okay. And so our report set that income level at a $1,400 cap, and I'd like to change it to $1,200 cap, just for the income from $75,000 to $90,000. Okay. Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay. Anyone in the public who would like to comment? Okay. Back to the committee. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Michael?
I'm sorry, I was still going through some notes.
Okay. would you like to hold the vote until you're finished? Michael?
Could you repeat the motion? I'm sorry.
Okay. Change the cap from 1,400 to 1,200. Just for the income level of 75,000 to 90,000.
And the impetus for this, was this a recommendation from Mr. Mayor, Mr. Murray, or yourself?
This came from a combination of recommendations to try to rein in our proposal, and this would help to get our projection down from 772,000 to 564,000.
So Cindy, we're just prorating it because we're lowering it from 100 to 90. So we're kind of prorating the cap by cutting off $200. So it makes sense.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Oh, okay. Unanimous? Okay.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, and I'd also like to change, this is a new revision. We did not touch this in our original report. I'd like to change the cap on our total town expenditure on senior tax relief in section 95-11 from 2.5% to 1.6%. Is there a second? Okay, Mark, thank you. Discussion.
Mark McDermott, District 7. Would this be reviewed yearly, or the cap on our cap on the total expenditure, or is this going to be for the life of the program, or how are we going to review this on an ongoing basis?
I think that's a really great and important question, and I'm also concerned about making such a strong limit right now, and I'd want to make sure that it went into the legislative history, that we as a committee would like each and every RTM committee for senior tax relief to examine the cap and make sure that it keeps up with the program and it enables as many participants as we need in this program to help our town. Is there any further comment from the, yeah, Michael?
Michael Hurley, RTM District 10. I continue to believe that this would be a significant reduction to the potential level of senior tax relief in town. I'm disappointed again that Mr. Mayor is not here. I'm disappointed that if people were considering or thought this was an important idea, why it wasn't brought to the committee's attention earlier. We had lots of meetings, many members of the public there, offering very thoughtful commentary on it, and you know, here we are at the 11th hour, and I can just say that it really feels as if some of these changes are being rushed, and we've come so far with senior tax relief, and I want to make sure that we get it right. And I thought we were all committed to a pretty potentially robust increase to senior tax relief. I mean, there was an RTM meeting. We stood up, Jill and I, and we noted to the first selectman that, you know, he needs to start, you know, preparing it, you know, to be ready for, you know, some potential reductions, you know, to revenue, because we all ran on a platform of senior tax relief. And, you know, based on some of the data we've seen from the various senior advocate organizations in town, just how much seniors, contribute, to the overall vitality and the financial well-being of our town. And I have to say that I'm a little disappointed as to what I'm hearing tonight.
Michael, but do you have a counter proposal? I mean, let's entertain another number and talk about it, but I don't understand what you're saying. Do you want to, so you want to full stop, keep it at 2.5% so that the selectman has to budget for $7.8 million?
I don't agree with the fact that you necessarily have to budget for $7.8 million. I think this is a very serious discussion for us to be having, Chairman Vergara, and I think you understand that. And, from my standpoint, I think this is being, rushed and sort of pushed down on us pretty quickly and pretty hard on a very, very important piece of legislation. We've been working very hard in a bipartisan fashion up until this point. And for Mr. Mayor to come in again at the 11th hour with this, to not be here, the first selectman was at the RTM meeting tonight, and he could have been here to talk us through this, and he is not here. And I have a problem with that.
We're rushing so that we can actually get this affected for this application season. We all know the process. We were rushing before. We were rushing through the October revisions as well. It's a part of the process. We're squeezed. We're elected for a two-year term. We just got onto this committee, basically. It's a difficult process to get anything done, and I think you understand that as well. We're all doing our best to try to ensure that we could have this happen for this application season. And the only way to do that is to figure out how we're changing this program tonight so we can get it to LNA.
Mark McDermott, District 7. I agree with Michael that we have worked in a very healthy bipartisan way, which was not the case the last 2 years where nothing got done. We are getting something significantly done this in year one. We still have another year to go. Let's measure the program. Let's measure the changes that we make to this program. See what happens next year, and we can recommend more changes next year. If we need to increase the limits, if we need to increase from 1.6 to 1.7%. I mean, at the end of the day, the town only has so much to spend on it. Do we want to run now next year on tax increases to cover $7.8 million? I mean, the town doesn't have $7.8 million out there. I mean, 4.2 is fairly robust to this program, considering that nothing got done the last 2 years.
Michael?
Do we have statistics on what the potential cost would be for each 0.10 percentage point increase? So what would it be at 1.7,
Yes,
1.8,
Ross sent that to us.
1.9, 2.0, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, and 2.5? It's in an email. You can find it in Ross Murray's email from I think November 20th. It's November 20th, 4:56 p.m. He broke it down in a chart. So 1.3% would equal 3,446,962. 1.4% would equal 3,712,113. 1.5% would be 3,977,264. 1.6 is 4,242,415.
1.7 is 4,507,566. 1.8 is 4,772,717. 1.9% would be 5,037,868, and 2.5 is 6,628,774.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat 2.0 again was?
He didn't give us 2.0, but he did 1.9 at 5,037,868.
And
But you can do it yourself with a calculator. The amount that he's using for the property tax levy is 265,150,946.
and your 1.6 that you're proposing is roughly 4.2 million?
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Can I ask one question, Jill? I'm still really not following Bob's numbers. His numbers balloon because he's saying instead of the 47% participation rate, saying like 94% would participate? Am I not reading that properly, or?
He changes the participation rate, but the 94% comes from the fact that 94% of the homes in Fairfield fall under the assessment limit that we were proposing.
But how much different would that be for a number with using the QTAV we've been using?
Well, we don't really know. We never had a number for how many people could qualify in town with a $650,000 asset limit. So we don't have a comparable number for the
Okay,
QTAV.
right. And we can't get that, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, no, we had
Cindy
that.
Parham. I would assume it's a privacy issue. We wouldn't know because of privacy. We wouldn't know why somebody didn't get qualified, because it could be a combination of things.
Right.
Right.
I think it's because we just don't have information about all the residents and their assets.
Right. For the question being, if we did have that number and we just kept everything else the same, at least we'd know how many more possible participants there could be, but.
I think that's why he wants to reel us in a little bit, is because it's kind of the unknown, because we're changing so many factors at once.
Right now, if we bring that limit down to 4.25 million, which is a 1.6%, that's a 12% increase over what we spent last year, which is nice. I was probably hoping for a little bit more. But I realize there's a lot of unknowns. One thing I am happy about is we're all kind of saying, let's take a look at this, let it run for a year. And if we need to make adjustments, because we don't know, we don't know. Why was it up to $7.8 million cap anyway, is my question. Where'd they come up with that number? I guess we were feeling a little good about ourselves at the time, or?
I don't
Okay.
know where the 2.5% cap came from.
If this is what we're going to go with, and I'm still not sure how we feel about it, because I've been hit with a lot of numbers on, at the finish line, and I have no one to bounce questions off of who might have the answers. If we did meet this 4.2, I don't think I would want to stop there, though, just for future reference. We're going in the right direction, but we still have a little ways to go, and maybe after the first year under our belt, we'll get a better idea.
I agree with you, Peter.
Do you, Mr.
I
Hurley?
agree with you, Peter,
Okay.
and
The big question is, does Mr. Hurley agree with me?
I agree with you, and we're going to get you across the finish line here, Peter. Trust me.
So, Jill, would you be open to a friendly amendment to the cap, or are you firm with the 1.6 number?
I'm open-minded.
I don't have any further questions right now. I'd like to hear what the public has to say.
Okay. Is there any public comment? Bill?
Hello, can you hear me? Bill Gerber, RTM District 2. Thank you very much for all the work that you've put in. This is incredible. I was at the L&A committee meeting and, got to hear Bob's concerns. I'm just going to sort of, since I'm new to this, everything I learned about this was basically from that meeting. So I think what I'm going to say, I either heard from Bob or people around the table. First of all, that the QTAV is untenable. I think a prior speaker said that it can't be verified. It's a nightmare for the tax department, and so that I'm very glad that that's going away, and I think it has to go away. The other thing that I heard from Bob Mayer was that it's not so much that he knows that the participation is going to go up, but the exposure to potentially having a much larger number is there and can't be quantified yet because he's got no way to match up the individual's income to their home values. So if he was able to look at the qualifying homes and match them up to incomes, then he could say, okay, this is the max exposure that we have. But since he can't, he's saying, it's possible that we'll double the participation rate, and that if we do that, then those numbers have to come out of somewhere. We either increase our mill rate or we cut in other places in the budget in order to fund it. And I think what you've done here makes sense to me by lowering these thresholds until we at least get a sense for what the participation rate is going to be. And it seems to me that if you revisit it annually, you can change those numbers over time, to get to the total number that you want. And the other, obviously the other thing was, the exposure of 7.9 million, the 2.5%. Bringing that down makes a ton of sense, whether it's 1.6 or 1.5 or phased in over time. That makes a ton of sense because we can't, if we were to have that total exposure of 7.9, I don't know where we'd possibly find the money in the budget to do that. So I just want to commend you for being flexible and doing what you're doing, and also for getting rid of the QTAV, which I think was a great idea. Thanks.
Herb?
I just had a couple of questions. Just Herb Limecooler. Herb Limecooler, 83 Spruce Street. Just a couple of questions, just to make sure that these were addressed. So, does the committee have to vote again on elimination of the QTAV, or is that, since that was part of your initial recommendation, does that just carry through?
That's what I think.
It's just a reduction to the number that we had all voted on from 880 to 770. We've already voted on eliminating the QTAV.
Okay.
It's.
It was just a housekeeping question.
No problem.
I'm sorry. The other question was, if the cap were to be applied, has it been determined as to how that cap would be applied? Where the cuts, how the cuts would take place?
So you mean that total?
The public. I'll
The
rephrase
public
that.
is supposed to provide commentary.
Yes.
It's not a Q&A with the committee, Chairman. I ask that Robert Rules of Order be followed for the meeting.
Okay.
But
Mr.
we
sorry.
this is the standard way that we run our committee, so that we can get these kinds of questions and we can answer more easily with the seniors. And we run our committee a little bit differently because public comment is essential to our task. So I appreciate having these kinds of questions, and I think that it's a good way to run our committee.
Okay, I'll just to address Mr. Hurley's concern, I'll just make it in the form of a comment. I think it's important that the committee address how the cap would be applied if it hasn't already been established. So that was the other housekeeping point I wanted to make. And then beyond that, I just wanted also to publicly thank, not just privately, but publicly thank all the members of the committee for their excellent work over the past year. They've really done great work. And to say that Fairfield Senior Advocates really views these changes as interim catch-up measures that have been proposed, and they're reasonable in the context of the budget pressures that we face as a town. But also support a continued study over the longer term to address the needs of all of our seniors, and also to evaluate the extent to which incentives are effective in terms of really retaining our seniors over time. This isn't information that's readily available that could be obtained in a month or 2 months or 6 months. It would probably take an extended period of time to gain that information, but we recommend that we make an effort as a town to try to do all we can to capture that information, that data in any way that we can going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Actually, Herb raised a really important point about the language for this change to 9511. In Ross's email, he suggested certain language for 9511, and I wanted to use what he had suggested. So Ross had suggested that we make it more consistent with the state language, and he asked that we change the language saying 2.5% of the total real property tax levied to of the total real property tax assessed. And after speaking with him on the phone about this change, I had asked him, I wanted to make sure that the numbers he gave us for the percentages aligned with his new language, the assessed rather than levied. I just wanted to make sure that didn't make a difference with those calculations of what 1.6% or 1.7% is. And he said that he used what was assessed to calculate those numbers for us. He also suggested that we specify the time that it is assessed. So he suggested after that language, 2.5% of the total real property tax assessed in Fairfield, putting in as of the signing of the grands list for the prior fiscal year. I also asked him about the issue of proration. If we were to hit the cap, I've read in other towns that they've limited, when they make revisions, they limit any proration to the higher income groups, and I was interested in doing that for this cap as well. But Ross said that the vendor that figures out the relief owed to each of the participants can't do that. It would have to be a proration for everyone, and so his office would have to do that within a span of 3 weeks. So I don't think that that's feasible. So I would keep it with the language as it exists in the event that either foregoing limitation, in the event that either foregoing limitation on relief is reached, relief shall be prorated among qualified applicants. So it would be prorated equally.
I'm sorry, Chairman Vergara. Was that in an email? Where are you referencing?
Yes, it was an email from Ross Murray.
What is the date of that email?
November 20th at 2:53 PM.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I find it.
Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry. November 20th at 4:15.
4:15, okay, I'm going to look for it now, thank you.
Any comments on that language? Okay.
Again, I just want to just pull it up so I can read it, so if you could, I'm happy if you want to go back to the public for more comment, but I'd like to just review that language.
Okay. Is there any further public comment? Phil?
Phil Piers, District 4. I want to thank the committee for its work first. This committee has worked harder than any RTM committee that I'm aware of, so you all deserve a lot of credit for doing that. This is, I know, a Herculean effort, and we all appreciate the work that you did in developing this expertise. So I have one comment on the change to the cap, and I don't see this as a reduction in the historical relief that's been provided to seniors. It's really, the changes as part of the larger constellation of changes that you guys are making, and it allows for the town to make the change in the other programs while at the same time mitigating any potential financial risk to the town. So 7.8 is the current cap, but that's an artificial number because we've never hit that, and we have historical experience to know that we're not going to hit it in the next fiscal year, right? We don't know that with the other changes that you guys are making. My comment is that the projected relief, if 4.2 is the goal for relief, and that's what we want to set the cap at, or a rate that reflects 4.2, my suggestion is to phase that in over time, because that still would mean a $600,000 increase in relief almost in a single year potentially, and that has a significant impact on the town. We had a very lean budget this past year. The year before that it was very lean. We have departments with very modest budgets that are funded at levels that are lower than they historically were. Short of cutting the education budget, I don't know where you find 600 grand in our budget in any given year. So I just think that that's something that should be probably phased in over a couple of years, maybe 3 years, I don't know. Another comment is just that I do think, I think we all wish Bob Mayer was here tonight. I do think the RTM is going to need to know what he thinks of these revisions that you're making. I think everything you're saying makes a lot of sense, but I do think we need his input. As part of this process, I'm sure we'll get it. And then on the last change that was discussed about the real property tax levied, I'm not sure, I hadn't talked to the assessor about it. I'm not sure I understand the reason for the change. Assessment's different than tax levied. There are properties that are assessed for which no tax is levied against because they might be exempt. So if you've got a net grand list, but then there's a grand list that includes properties that are exempt, and that's used by the state for different purposes. So I'm not sure the purpose of that change and what it could potentially mean for the ordinance.
Yes, sure.
Thanks, Phil. One thing, too, about, it would be a $600,000 increase, roughly. A few years ago, we spent over $4 million. We're going backwards. So if we have to bite the bullet, and all I hear, and Mr. Tetro included, we have to help out our seniors. So I'm hoping he's going to support this. So if you look back a few years ago, it was at 4, now we're going to 4 point. It's not that much of an increase. Compared to last year, yeah, but not in previous years. So I hope everybody keeps that in mind, too.
Peter, I'm sorry, I just beg to differ. We budgeted over $4 million, but we did not spend over $4 million. We had a surplus. Okay. Now, well, we were originally had a budget of, in 2014, of $4.55 million. We had a surplus of $750,000, so we spent, what, 3.8?
Michael?
And that was with a higher participation level.
And I'm sorry for sighing. I'm just really frustrated with where we are tonight. And the information and it's not a criticism of anybody on this committee. And, for the record, the memorandum that I have in front of me that Jill Vergara put together in my 10 years on the RTM is probably one of the best memorandums that I've seen. But without, the fiscal officer here, to answer, questions and really walk us through all of his thinking, and I did support the first few changes. I'm really hard pressed, to support, a change in the cap without Mr. Mayor here. And I would just add that I think almost everything that we've done in this committee, and you can go back and see the public record, is everything we did, I'm pretty sure was close to, unanimous, almost all of the changes. And, now to be, again, at the 11th hour, and Peter and I'm not going to speak for Peter, but I think you can hear it from him, he has some concerns too. And look, I know we want to get this done. I know we want to, so that, come February, the seniors, have access to the best program. But, but there are some questions here. And, again, I'm just frustrated with the administration. No, I'm not taking out anything. My frustration on the committee, you're not Mr. Mayor, you're not Mr. Tetro, so.
I just want to say that I'm not sure any of this we can point to the first selectman on this. This was Bob Mayer not reading emails, and depending on Ross as our representative for the finance department. If anything, Mike has been really helpful in terms of getting me information that I would not have been able to access any other way. He emailed every single other first selectman of all of these towns that we used to base our report on, and I wouldn't have been able to get that information any other way. So he's been helpful. So I just wanted to say that.
Cindy Parham, do we need to discuss the possible phase-in that Phil mentioned?
Yeah, sure.
I'm not really sure
How do you
how
feel about it?
It sounds like it's complicated for 9:30 tonight. I don't know.
Well, I feel similar to Peter in that I think that we've compromised a lot with these numbers, especially if we're able to get to this cap, and I do not want to phase it in. That's my personal opinion, is that I think that we've been moving to make changes that will help seniors and affect some change. And I'm not sure a phase-in of a couple $100,000 in relief every 2 years would be that effective.
Mark McDermott, District 7. Mr. Hurley, would you be comfortable with raising the cap percentage? Or do you want to make a motion to raise the cap percentage? Or you want to just leave it as it is? I mean, I don't think leaving it as it is probably doesn't make a difference to anything, because we're not going to spend that money on the program. Do you want to make a motion to raise the cap from Jill's 1.6 to something
What I'd
else?
like to see is for Mr. Mayor to be here, to
And
walk
Michael,
us
he's
through
not
a full
here.
present- Well, he should be here, Mark. I'm sorry. This is serious business.
Okay,
This is a town
we've
law.
We've beat that horse to death. So let's talk about, it's 9:34 at night. Let's talk about what's on the table right now, okay?
And we need to make this decision tonight so that we can get a special hearing with the LNA committee.
So my question is, do you want to do nothing with the cap? Do you want to make a motion?
Mark, there's a motion on the table from the chairman as it relates to the cap.
Do you want to amend her motion?
It's not my motion.
So you want to amend your motion, her motion?
I mean, that's what
Wanna
this
make an amendment
discussion
to the
is
motion?
for. If you want to talk about a different cap and something that you'd feel more comfortable with, let's talk about it. I'm not,
The numbers are right here if you want to look at them.
I mean, I would be much more comfortable, again, with Mr. Mayor here, and I don't think it's appropriate to say, hey, Michael, you know, you're beating, you know, a dead horse, because this is a serious piece of legislation that's going to affect our town. And, you know, I'm sorry that Mr. Mayor didn't read his, you know, emails, you know, sooner, and he came in, you know, close to the 11th hour, but he really should be here to walk us through things, Mark. He should be. And Jill made a motion, and that's the motion that's on the floor.
if there's no further discussion, let's put it to a vote.
Can we repeat the motion? It's so long ago.
Okay. I'd like to limit my motion to changing 9511 from 2.5% of the total tax levied to 1.6%. I don't want to propose that language, the other language, just yet until we clarify what the difference between assessed and levied is.
Am I allowed to ask a question about your motion?
Sure.
So the piece of information that you're looking for clarification on, is the intent to vote this out of committee as is, and then it goes to LNA, and then when it's on the floor of the RTM, you get the clarification on that, and then if deemed appropriate, a change is made?
Yes, I don't think this is an essential language, and it won't change any of our projections or our evaluation of the revisions. It's coming from Ross, and he can come before LNA and explain it, and maybe we can add that language when we're in front of LNA.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to abstain because Mr. Mayor is not here.
Okay.
Cindy Parham, District 2. So the cap is 1.6 with a maximum of $4,242,415.
Yes. Okay, so all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
What was Peter's vote?
I don't know.
You've just taken about 10.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'll go. But for the record, I want to make sure this is revisited and next year, after we've had it run through
And the
it,
year after that.
and if adjustments can be made.
I agree.
We all agree on that.
I agree too, Peter. No changes have been made since 2013, so these are substantial.
Sit down again. I mean, it's my first year, and I haven't heard very many good things about past committees, and I don't want it to go by at a zero again. So 12% or a max of 12% is better than 0% the last math course I took, so.
Okay. Thank you. So it was 4-1. Okay.
401, right?
401, yeah.
Thanks, Michael. So I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.